So today we're talking about Genesis 1, 3 through 5. And we're talking about the God who is over light. First, let's talk about the phrase, let there be. Think about this. This is how God created the universe. He spoke. We can't even begin to imagine this, I don't think. I mean, let me just blow your mind for a minute. Think about this just for a few minutes. First, God has infinite knowledge. He knows all things. He's omniscient. There's nothing that can be known that he doesn't know. All right, that should blow your mind already. So, also, I want you to think about this for a minute. God has always known all things that exist. He's always known about the things that exist right now, but he also has always known about things that don't exist. He has always known about things that will never exist. Think about that. Things that will never exist, God has always known about that. Right? So in creating the universe, he chose from his infinite knowledge to create what he chose to create. He chose to create certain things out of the storehouse of his knowledge. He chose very specific things to make. And how did he choose to create these things? By speaking them into existence. God commanded, and things came to be. We can't even imagine the sheer power it takes to create something that has never existed before, and to form that thing just by speaking. It is amazing to think about. Well, God spoke on the first day, and then there was light. Remember back in verse 2 that he had already created darkness. So darkness already exists, but now he's going to introduce light. Light is a created thing. Oftentimes we think about God and his glory, we think about light, and that is proper. But God is not light, and light is not a characteristic of God. Let me say it this way. It is a created thing. Light that exists in reality is a created thing. He has chosen to manifest his glory to us through the use of light. Remember, God is invisible. We can't see God. But light is visible. And so for us as finite creatures to be able to see the glory of God, he chose to use light to manifest his glory. Now, some people have a problem with the existence of light without sun, moon, and stars. They have a problem because, light comes from those things, and that's where we get the light on the earth from. But is that really a problem? I don't really have a problem with light existing. Humans used to think that light only came about from burning things. If you had fire, you have light. You have to burn something in order to have light. Nowadays, we don't believe that. Right now I stand in the room with LEDs, light-emitting diodes. Those things are not on fire right now, but they're emitting light, obviously. And so our views of light and things like that have changed over the years. And so do we really need a sun, moon, and stars to provide light on the earth? Well, let me point you to Revelation. We are told that there won't be a need for the sun, moon, and stars because Jesus himself, the Lamb, will radiate light to illuminate the city of God. You know what? Others still have a problem with having days before the creation of the sun and moon. They say, well, you can only have a day when the sun is there shining and then it's rotating, and that's why you have a day. But really all you need to have a day, all you need to have evening and morning, a day, like the Genesis talks about, all you really need is the earth to exist, which we have here in Genesis. We need the earth to be spinning around, which, okay, we have the earth. It could be spinning. It doesn't specifically say, but why not? And then we need a light source. We need a source of light going out. Guess what? We have all that here in Genesis 1:3. So there you go. There's no problem. The fact that could God shine light without even a light source? I was talking with some of our fellow congregation on Sunday about, could God have a light radiating, I can't say that word, radiating out of the darkness without a light source? And we had to say, yeah, of course he could. He's God. He can do whatever he wants. He doesn't need a light source. He doesn't need a light bulb. He doesn't need LEDs to provide light to the world. He could just shine light without the source. Now, let me take you out of Genesis for a moment and into the New Testament for a second. Often God will use the physical to explain spiritual realities. Doesn't he do that quite often? Jesus did that all the time for his disciples, hence parables. But in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, we see that in creation of light, we see the very nature of our salvation. Paul uses the idea of light and the very natural thing of God speaking light into the darkness to talk about our salvation. Now, in that chapter, Paul says that we don't tamper with the gospel or use cunning or scheme people into heaven. There's a lot I can say about that in churches, what churches are doing today, but I'll say that for another time. But he says, if the pure gospel doesn't change people, the gospel by itself, that Jesus Christ died, rose again, he saved sinners. We're all sinners. He saved us by his own power and his own atonement that he made, not by works. If that doesn't save people, then they're already dying because Satan is blinding them from the truth. That's what Paul tells us. And what does it take for someone to come to a saving knowledge of God? What does it take to save a sinner? Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, for God who said, let light shine out of the darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The God that spoke light into creation must speak light into the hearts of people. He must speak the light of Jesus into being, into our hearts. This is one of the reasons why I believe that God chose to create light on the first day, to make it a separate creation, not just to throw it in with everything else. And have Moses specifically single out the creation of light, because it would serve as a signpost to salvation in Jesus Christ.